Emotional intelligence is needed for effective leaders. There is a clear correlation between the level of EQ and decision-making capabilities of leaders. The world is dehumanizing humanity. Stand on high moral grounds and be humane before anything else. Remember that self-criticism is productive and healthy, and that you cannot address your weaknesses if you won't admit you have any. Learn from your past, don't live in it, and certainly don't let your past devour your future. And finally, always have the willingness to dive prudently, and I underline prudently, into the deep side of life. Final word is that for all sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest are these: it might have been. But someone else said, it is never too late for us to become what we might have been. So my topic is on emotional intelligence and the global leader of today. I'm going to try to shed light on how important EQ is to practicing leaders, regardless of the position, not just political, it could be in the corporate sector as well. So the world we are living in, I think it's important to shed some light on this because it will influence what I'm going to talk about later. We're living in a traumatized humanity. Almost all populations of the world require post-trauma therapy to heal from the psychological and mental impact of COVID-19. These statistics and the statistics that will follow are all from 2022, and these are the references that are included in the presentation. So the numbers are much larger now. We had 600 million cases, 6.5 million deaths, 12.6 billion doses that were given. If you look at the number of car accident deaths annually, it's about 1.3 million, with almost 10 million cancer deaths per year. These are just some of the parameters that reflect how traumatized the humanity is. Not to mention global conflict, the last of which is the Ukrainian war, which has over 100,000 fatalities so far. These are some of the other conflicts over the past decades that, if you look at some of the figures here, the cumulative fatalities are in the millions. And these are just a sample of some of the conflicts that have taken place over the years. We're looking at volatile economies, a world in recession and on the brink of depression. Normal inflation rate is usually less than 2%. The global average inflation rate is 7.5%. That was January 2022. It's much higher now. The EU inflation rate is 8.9, or was 8.9% in July 2022. Needless to say, the gas supply disruption shortage has affected the whole economic system across Europe and the world. Nature is revenging. There are many examples. This is just one of them. Europe is thirsty. 47% of Europe in warning, 17% of Europe in alert. There are references to all of these. The references are towards the end pertaining to the three sections of my presentation. On the other hand, there are energy breakthroughs, renewable and cheap energy for all. We now have 3D printing of wind turbine towers. Some of the states in the US, such as Texas, is always sunny or windy, so wind, solar power can replace coal. We have Swedish and Chinese scientists that have built batteries that can store solar energy for up to 18 years. And we have next generation materials for more efficient electronics. We have new frontiers, fact or fiction. These are examples. The metaverse that mixes and includes the virtual reality with augmented reality. SpaceX, human space flight program. Bacteriophage. Phage therapy is to identify viruses that feed on superbugs and find a safe way to deliver them to a patient. Age of the robots. We have companies that generate humanoids that walk, talk, go upstairs, and behave in a very realistic manner. Conversational artificial intelligence is also expanding exponentially. We have language models that are built on neural network architectures. We have a hyper-connected world to help us understand and manage social, economic, and political consequences of digital technology that is changing very quickly. Adoption of new work tech has vastly improved company collaboration, and 80% of businesses expect their organization to enter a hyper-innovation phase due to tech-powered hybrid working. So what are the outcomes of change as a result of what's happening in the world today? Well, uncertainty. Fear and uncertainty can leave you feeling stressed, anxious, and powerless over the direction of your life. Passiveness is the unwillingness to take action nor to initiate a new activity due to demotivation, discouragement, fear, and uncertainty. Aggression, there's a positive correlation between scarcity, uncertainty, and aggressive behavior. Volatile values, when uncertainty dominates people, people become doubtful. So when their world becomes unstable, people who are hurt tend to question global values. So you have deteriorating morals, ethics, religion, family, and so on, and you have ascending individualism, pragmatism, indifference, skepticism, and so on. Needless to say, there's social strife, so global livelihood struggle. We all know, and of course the number is more today, we have about 3.3 billion living at less than $5.50 a day. We have 26 million refugees in the world, the highest ever seen. Again, these figures are 2022. We have 50 million internally displaced. This has never happened before. At the same time, we have innovation. So need is the mother of all. In the first quarter of 2022, it showed record patent grants, and artificial intelligence sees the highest growth in patents in that same quarter. And Asian companies dominate patent filings. As a result, we need to redefine education. The new education mainstream includes online learning platforms such as Udacity, influencer-based content such as Upfluence, focused degrees. Instead of having 3 or 4 year bachelor programs, today you have platforms such as Coursera that can offer you the same in 6 months. You have focus on blended learning, where the learner is engaged in different learning experiences and protocols. Of course, you always have the inclusion question, social inclusion, women empowerment, youth engagement, financial inclusion, as well as other dimensions of inclusion. Attention for all sustainability-related issues usually fades away when crisis hits. Also, something to consider. So as a result, how do you profile today's leaders? Well, global leaders must have global mindset and local sensitivities, or glocal. So they need to develop a global mindset and understand how the world is influencing their agenda. They should focus. Having to stay abreast of global dynamics, the leader is exposed to all kinds of content, so it is easy to get distracted. So many different factors that hits his attention every day. In a disrupted world, the mission of today's leader requires them to be that focused on the goal. Relationship builder. Relations have always been and will continue to be at the base of growth. Leaders need to find innovative ways to keep building their networks. Obviously, this is essential. Resilience. Change is the name of the game in a disrupted world that we live in. So it requires people to change their habits in order to adapt and persevere. This requirement is tenfold more important when it comes to global leaders. Why? Well, because change is a top-down dynamic, whether we like it or not. Responsiveness. So resilience does not eliminate responsiveness. A leader needs to be both. Resilience is fluidness, responsiveness is speed. He should be outcome-driven. So outcome is more important than time spent at the workplace. Leaders of today need to fight the urge of seeing people behind desks and focus on their team's outcomes, regardless of where they do the work. He has to be an innovator. Innovation for today's leader is indispensable. Many think that innovation is a skill, but actually it is also an acquired trait. He He has to be an initiator. So today's leader needs not only be an innovator, but also capable of turning their own innovation into reality. So achieving this goal requires taking initiative. Initiative means not waiting for anyone to nudge you. Instead, you nudge yourself. He needs to be a motivator. The workforce of today is driven by balance and lifestyle, in as much as they are driven by career growth and income. So today's leaders need to be aware of those dynamics. As a result, what's the skill set of today's global leader? And this will, as a result, lead to where I want to go next. So he has to decision-making, obviously. So responsiveness as a leadership trait is reflected in decision-making as a leadership skill. Problem-solving, making the best decision amidst unique circumstances, since there will be many options. Planning and monitoring today are the other face of the coin for the outcome-driven mindset of today's leader. Of course, mastering tech tools is no more an option for today's leader. He needs to acquire that knowledge. Coaching and mentoring. Building the capacity of promising and growing talent can only happen through nurturing. It has to be carried out. Communication. Communication today is more than ever central for getting things done at the workplace. You can be brilliant in anything you do. If you're not a good communicator, you'll not be able to achieve what you want. Handling people and complex business problems are loaded with psychological and emotional levers. So resolving these challenges requires the leader to gain hard psychological skills as well. He needs to be a negotiator. So leaders today are required to be tough, yet diplomatic negotiators. So yesterday we used to talk about transformational leadership. Today we are additionally talking about transforming leadership, that is, building a new breed of leaders who are ready to deal with disruption, uncertainty, and a whole new human mindset. So are we up to it? I want to marry emotional intelligence to leadership at this point. So, of course, emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, as well as, and that's more important, to recognize and influence the emotions of those around you. So I'm going to talk about how leaders have to deal with change, with the challenges, and how EQ comes into play in that role. So change, we're living, as you've seen in the previous slides, we're living in an exponential times, changing very quickly in so many dimensions and in so many ways. Very quick example, and there are hundreds of examples. If you look at the number of active users on Facebook over the years, it was 1 million end of 2004. In 2017, it's over 2 billion. This is a bar chart of the same data. So we're living in an unstable environment as well. We've seen many examples recently, but it's been the case for decades. So there is chaos in many areas globally, including the MENA region and Europe. And of course, when you have chaos in an area, it affects, everything is interconnected. It affects the economy, the financial, it affects the social aspect, the political aspect, and so on. So we are living in an influential and smart leadership era at the same time, because leadership protocols have changed immensely over the past decades. It's no longer the hierarchical command and control structures of the past. These days are gone. They don't work anymore. We are living in a diversified talent and team environment that has to be taken into consideration. For example, 65% of today's school children will eventually be employed in jobs that have yet to be created. So adapt education and training of next generation in business to new professional skills for jobs that have yet to be created. And in fact, you will see over the coming decades, there will be a lot of educational tools, education programs that will be focused on specific skills. So you need to gain X number of skills for that job, Y number of skills for another job, and so on. And that's the direction for the future in many cases. Change is a chemistry of interactions. Again, I say everything is interconnected. So a leader has to deal with different environments at the same time. The organizational, the technological, the political, economic, as well as the social. So definitely there is a need to change in a positive way. Why would people want to change? To persevere, to avoid pain, to gain a positive outcome. So change is definitely part of what has to be addressed by leaders. What are the challenges? The execution gap. How can we bridge the vision, strategy, execution gap? Sourcing the right talent, where to find the right candidate, very essential for organizations or political leaders, whatever it is. Investing in people, benefits of investing in people, well, you can say the impact of not investing in people is much more costly than the initial. Individual dependencies and succession, identifying the key employees and potential successors, setting up a succession plan, essential in many businesses, in the banking business, in many organizations. Decision making, how to prepare new leaders for optimal decision making. Are all accountability mechanisms available? Some of the questions that need to be asked. Complexity of management layers, number of managers to executives. Authority and accountability distribution, is it there? Relation between managers and employees, essential. All of these, again, are issues that need to be addressed. What sort of governance? Is it corporate governance? Is corporate governance the solution? Maybe so for many cases. Information management, so ability of staff to manage information. What is the strategic direction for the overall technology environment in the company or organization? Allocation of internal investments, so how much money to allocate on people development versus business development. Again, it could be different answers for different organizations. Maintaining innovation, essential. Company culture and people innovation. How do you treat that? How to reward people who innovate, recognize people with innovation skills. Legal compliance, compliance with country legal structure as well as other structures that may be necessary, EU and so on. Standardization, reliability of workflows, consistency of decisions, again, have to be taken into consideration. Organizational structure, communication style with employees, essential. Why am I talking about these? Well, you will see that most leadership challenges have to do with people. Hence the importance of emotional or social intelligence and how to deal with people. Before that, leadership style and impact on performance, securing the right performance enablers is imperative for change and engagement. So performance enablers, including strategy and objectives, environment, people, products and services, tools, will eventually lead to business success. So the evolution of leadership concerns, if you look with respect to time, the complexity increases, the focus switches from operations to change, the concern switches from efficiency to renewal, and the response switches from budgeting and procedures to innovation. So there are 6 different leadership styles: commanding, the basic one, visionary, affiliative, democratic, pace setting, and the ultimate, which is the coaching. So looking at the commanding, you are demanding immediate compliance. You're basically saying, do what I tell you. And the emotional, the EQ competency there is drive to achieve, initiative, self-control. Going to the other end of the spectrum, coaching, where you develop people for the future, where they try different scenarios, and the EQ competency there is to develop others, empathy, self-awareness. Why do people have different leadership styles? Well, there are several reasons. Experience, different experiences. Personality, different personalities. Different education, different values. So as a result, you end up with different leadership styles pertaining to leaders in different organizations, whether in the public or the corporate sector. So levels of leadership spans from level 1, the highly capable individual, up to level 5, the executive. If we can look at the observed behavior for each one, it goes from highly capable individual that makes good productive contributions through talent, knowledge, skills, and good work habits, up to level 5, the executive, where you build enduring greatness through a combination of personal humility plus professional will. So how does emotional intelligence fit into this? Well, first of all, is it one or multiple intelligences? We have a mental IQ, we have the emotional or social EQ, we have the physical PQ, and we have the spiritual or SQ. So if we look at the attributes for each one, the PQ, the attribute is discipline, the IQ it's vision, the EQ it's passion, and the SQ is conscience. So basically, conscience often provides the why, vision identifies what you're trying to accomplish, discipline represents how you're going to accomplish it, and passion represents the strength of feeling behind the why, the what, and the how. Emotional intelligence is always a tug-of-war between the heart and the brain when leaders have to make a decision on any issue at hand. Daniel Goleman once said that CEOs are hired for their intellect and business expertise and fired for a lack of emotional intelligence. He also said, for leaders, the first task in management has nothing to do with leading others. Step one poses a challenge of knowing and managing oneself. Very true. So emotional intelligence have to deal with the interaction between self and social awareness, as well as self-management and relationship management. So if we look at the pyramid of EQ from the me, the base of the pyramid where you have self-awareness, listen and accept my emotions, or one's emotions, up to the top of the pyramid where you're dealing with others and you're dealing with empathy, respect, honor others, emotions. So the 5 components are the social skills, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, and empathy. And these are the definition of each one. The self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your emotions. Self-regulation, the ability to control or redirect disruptive impulses and moods. Motivation is a passion to work for reasons that go beyond money and status. Empathy is the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people. And social skill is the proficiency in managing relationships and building networks. Very essential. So emotional intelligence can be viewed as the intrapersonal, which is the self-awareness and the self-management, the catalyst, which is the energizers that you see there, and the interpersonal, which is the social awareness and the relationship management. So as an engineer, I would say the intrapersonal is the input, the catalyst is the processor or the processing element, and the interpersonal is the output. The LQ, or the leadership quotient, is the overlap between the intellectual ability, the execution capability, and the emotional awareness. So when this LQ overlap is bigger, it means that you are a better strategic leader, operational leader, and people leader. So Goleman also said that for star performers in all jobs, in every field, emotional competence is twice as important as cognitive abilities. For success at the highest levels in leadership positions, emotional competence accounts for virtually the entire advantage. This is how important EQ is. So in summary, if we look at leadership style, leaders with low EQ, we're talking about aggressive, demanding, bossy, confrontational. Those with high EQ, we're talking about assertive, ambitious, decisive. With respect to communication style, leaders with low EQ, we're talking about poor listeners, impulsive, selfish. Those with a high EQ, sociable, charming, persuasive. With respect to management style, low EQ, passive, unresponsive. With high EQ, patient, consistent, good listener. And finally, the working style, leaders with low EQ are critical, picky, fussy. And those with high EQ, detailed, careful, meticulous, systematic. So Forbes have listed top 10 emotionally intelligent future 500 CEOs. I'll just mention a couple. Jeff Bezos, for example, his obsession with the hearts and minds of his customers and his long-term perspective on relations are legendary. Similarly, Warren Buffett, intensely loyal and relationship-driven. The same goes for Ursula Burns. Her assertiveness is matched by a sense of mission that inspires her employees. And you can go through the other examples that have similar EQ qualities. So what's the key? The key is keep educating yourself. Education is the prime mover for change in today's complex and dynamically changing world. Education should connect language, culture, and moral values to reshape the learner's identity, encourage free thinking and responsible citizenship, preparing new generations for the social, political, and economic development of their countries. Education is also about creating global citizens, leaders that have the necessary breadth or soft skills, as well as depth or the hard skills in the area of specializations. There were many surveys carried out on multinational companies in the US that have concluded that fresh graduates that go into these companies suffer mostly with their soft skills as opposed to the hard skills. So soft skills are essential for your workplace, they're essential for your home, for your community, for your country, regardless of where the position is. So this is why when I established many universities in the region, the model that I aspire for and that I regard the best higher education model is the liberal arts higher education model, where the general education component or the soft skills are essential. So in a 90-credit bachelor program, 3 years, you're talking about 33 credits of general education, more than a third of it goes to soft skills. Education is the ability to distinguish facts from opinions. You have to have analysis and synthesis abilities, to be creative and critical. Critical thinking is essential. Appreciate diversity, believe in equality, and embrace others. Very important. So critical thinking is basically asking the right questions. Who, what, where, when, why, how, and so on. So in summary, leadership is about creating leaders, not followers. Effective leadership means having moral authority rather than formal authority. I strongly believe in that. Stay determined to succeed, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one will. Focus not on ego, but on what can be achieved. Emotional intelligence is needed for effective leaders. There is a clear correlation between the level of EQ and decision-making capabilities of leaders. The world is dehumanizing humanity. Stand on high moral grounds and be humane before anything else. Remember that self-criticism is productive and healthy, and that you cannot address your weaknesses if you won't admit you have any. Learn from your past, don't live in it, and certainly don't let your past devour your future. And finally, always have the willingness to dive prudently, and I underline prudently, into the deep side of life. Final word is that for all sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest are these: it might have been. But someone else said, it is never too late for us to become what we might have been. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diab. We now have a few more minutes for questions and answers.
I don't think there are any questions.
I will have one, but there is the lady here first. Please.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting and really easy to follow. My question is...
By the way, there are lots of references here that you can go to. All right? Yeah.
It was very interesting. Wouldn't you argue, though, that a lot of the conditions or the skill sets of the leader that you put forward for a leader of today could be applied to leaders of like 100 years ago, though? Because a lot of the skill sets... Or no, we wouldn't agree?
I mean, yes and no. There are skill sets that are essential, whether 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years from now. But you've noticed that our world is changing so fast. I mean, you didn't need the tech skills 100 years ago to succeed as a leader. Today, it's essential. There are many things that are mutating and that are changing. Soon, you need to be an AI expert to be a successful leader. So the requirements are increasing because the world is becoming more and more challenging, more demanding for leaders to make decisions based on know-how, not on guesswork. So yes and no. The answer is yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I think it's always been important for leaders to recognise change and where it's going. And I think that the technological improvements that we've had, I suppose, in the last few decades, but you could still apply those to of the past. For instance, even in the wars and having telegrams, you still need to know what tech is available and how to use it and be accepting of utilising it.
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
May I just
Please go
ask,
ahead. Yeah.
one question about your approach? You told us that change somehow has a top-down dynamic, but you also emphasized the importance of non-hierarchical structures in terms of efficient management and leadership. So how are these to be reconciled? Because in politics, in situations of revolution, I think the change is coming from from the bottom.
So,
isn't it?
I'm talking from practice. I mean, when we're talking about theory, it's one thing. In reality, it's another. So, when you want to move from theory to policy, you're talking up, top-down approach. I mean, there are, draft laws that have to be submitted to by the cabinet to the parliament. They have to discuss it, vote on it, so that it becomes a law. If it's a decree, then it's the same thing for the cabinet to consider it. So, I mean, in many instances, when you want to implement change at the political level, it has to come from top down. Of course, this is driven by the bottom up, because there would be all sorts of pushback to go in that direction by different political parties, by people, by but when you're talking about organizations in the corporate sector, hierarchy becomes slightly different. So you have to, as I mentioned, encourage innovation, and when you pinpoint innovative ideas and people that are innovative in your organizations, you have to encourage them and push them forward. And as a result, I mean, you have to surround yourself by people that are better than you. And that's the only way that you can push your organization forward.
If we apply just one question follow-up on politics. If we apply what you explained to us to politics, could one say that people in top leadership positions as presidents, who are often addressed to as leaders and who are all powerful, lack this kind of emotional intelligence which you described, if they find themselves over time in a situation in which they are totally insulated from the reality of the state of which they are the top leader. And usually, and I was able to study that, so to speak, from the first row, in some countries over a period of 20 or 30 years, and I saw how the people changed, the individual, the top leader, changed under the circumstances of leadership. And maybe it has somehow to do with also what you described as the emotional intelligence. A lack of it ultimately may bring the catastrophic downfall, and it may bring a catastrophe upon the entire country that person was aspiring to.
This is happening in some places, in some countries. I was hoping you wouldn't ask that question, but the answer is yes, there are many leaders that don't have the needed EQ qualities that will empower them or enable them to make the right decisions, mostly critical decisions that influence the whole country. You know, if you're a president or a prime minister or Speaker of the House. And that's why this presentation is so timely, because when you have more and more people in political leadership positions, not in a specific. I'm not talking about the Middle East in general. You know, at the global level. Then yes, you end up with situations where systems break down. I mean, I think the model that many European countries are taking, where you look at cabinets, most of them are under 35 or under 40. They're all technocrats, they're all experts, they're all dynamic, they have know-how in all of the spectrum of the KPIs that I mentioned. This is important, this is necessary. And I think such cabinets succeed better. The days of political cabinets, I think, is over. But many countries are not convinced. I mean, my cabinet was very unique in the sense that it was non-partisan. None of them belonged to any political party. None of them were politicians. They were all experts in the subject matter. In places like Sweden, this is normal. In places like Lebanon, this is unique. Hasn't happened before. So I think this is needed. That's why, I mean, in a technocrat cabinet, you're more likely to have people with, the needed EQ qualities to make the right decisions than not. I've been in political cabinet when I was minister, and I know what they talk about. Basically, 90% is just useless, waste of time, that achieves nothing. So that's why I'm saying this presentation is timely, definitely for the Middle East, but at the global level as well.
Is there one more question? I thought yeah, please, the gentleman here. And that will be the final one if we want to keep the time.
There's another, there are two that,
Thank you for the presentation. I just gained some insight about leadership. I'm Ibrahim and I'm a student here.
I can't hear you. Could you raise your voice?
Yeah, I'm Ibrahim and I'm a student here in ICT. My question is about ChatGPT. I think it was introduced 3 months ago. It's a platform. When one writes one word, it will just provide a complete essay, academic essay, some kind of artificial intelligence. You just talk about various kind of intelligence. So my question is how this will affect academia and the fields of research.
Well,
is it positive or negative?
Yeah.
Thing? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, similar questions are posed by my children when they went through undergraduate study. Why the hell am I doing this? What's this course for? What's that for? And I kept telling them this is important. You don't realize it now, but you will later. This is part of the I mean, they're doing medicine, and they say, what's this cultural studies course for? How does it influence my future, and so on? Now, 10 years later, they're appreciating how important all of these soft skills courses were to their overall education. The breadth of knowledge is just as important as I'll give you a very simple example. Communication skills, okay? I mean, the humanities, social sciences, tech skills, management skills. But if you look at communication skills, if you're the best engineer, I'm an engineer. If you're the best engineer in the world and you cannot communicate your ideas, what's the point? So all of these help you to be a better person, a better manager, a better leader. Not just, at the national level. It could be at the neighborhood level. It could be a family level. It could be at the company level. But these are necessary. So don't underestimate, tasks that are requested from you and courses that you need to complete as part of your graduation requirements, because these programs have been studied for years and years by professionals, by top educationalists to do what's best for you as a student, and you will realize that later, when you become part of the corporate sector or public sector, wherever you work later. I think the gentleman had a question as well here.
Yeah. It was you or you or
yeah, it was
okay.
him.
So this will be the last one.
Yeah.
Let's see if it is
Yeah,
short,
this is
maybe.
very short.
Otherwise, we cannot.
My question is more of a comment, and I just want to commend you when you mentioned all about tech development, tech innovation. I think a lot of us right now in any country, we're talking about education with STEM, and we're always putting STEM forward. But I also like to acknowledge the fact that you mentioned about humanities as an important part of education, because that's where we often get left behind. A lot of us now are talking about tech innovation, and then once it's out there, like AI or robotics, once we have invented the technology, that's only the time when we ask, what are the social impacts? But we should learn to analyze the social impacts when we are learning about these things. So I really, really like how you said about education becoming more holistic, in a sense that it should involve soft skills. A lot of students nowadays also don't know how to communicate their ideas. So I think that's really, really important. So basically my question is just a comment on what you were saying.
No, but you're right. I mean, I'm a professor of computer engineering, and I've taught for almost 25, 30 years. So the reason why I'm saying this is that courses that I taught 20 years ago disappeared 10 years ago. They get diluted, they move. Numerical analysis, there's no point. You press the calculator now, you get everything. We used to teach numerical integration, differentiation, and so on, how to write a program for it. It's pointless now. The same for robotics. I mean, there's a lot of AI-related courses in some of the relevant engineering programs. Eventually, these will disappear. Everything is changing so quickly, and the curricula has to change as well, because it has to address the needs of the industry. You know, you cannot keep it static.
Very briefly, please, and that will be the last one.
Thank you.
I'm Najib from Afghanistan, student at ICD. My question is that is the criteria for leaders in developed countries and underdeveloped countries, is it different or not? Because from our experience in Afghanistan, many leaders and they were cabinet members, they were highly educated in developed countries, in Western countries, but unfortunately they were not effective in Afghanistan in government. When we compare with local leaders and commanders in Afghanistan who are governor, who are minister. But these people who are educated in Western countries, they were not good leaders, they were not effective in Afghanistan. I mean that they were, although highly educated in Western countries, but not they were effective in Afghanistan. Because we have a conservative society in underdeveloped countries.
So as an engineer in engineering, when you want to address a system, I dissect it and deal with each one. So you dealt with several things at the same time: educational system and political leadership. So an educational system, I mean, when you have excellent universities that are modeled against the liberal arts higher education model, where it balances soft and hard skills, yeah? You could have a top university, but then you're going to have a gap, you know, the gap between high school graduates and the university. That's what happened in the Gulf. You go to the GCC for the past 20 years, I mean, the gap is becoming narrower now, but graduates of high school spend a gap year of a year or year and a half to strengthen what was essentially their weak areas from the school system. So the transition becomes the bottleneck. What I'm trying to say is that if you strengthen your higher education system, you have to strengthen your K-12 as well. If you don't, then you're going to create a gap. And that's what happened in the GCC for many years. Very few, most 80% of school graduates, they go into this, what do they call it, foundation program, which is neither bachelor nor high school. You know, it's the gap that they have missed because the curricula at the K-12 did not keep up with the curricula of higher education. So it has to go together. As for political leaders that are educated outside, I mean, again, you have to look at their political agendas, their EQ qualities. It's not because they were educated outside that, you know, they they did not perform well as political leaders in Afghanistan. I don't think this correlates. I was at the American University of Beirut for 35 years, and the university has graduated hundreds of leaders that became leaders in Afghanistan. One of them, he was the president of Afghanistan. What was his name? Ashraf, yeah, exactly. And in other countries, presidents, MPs, they transformed their countries in many instances, in many cases. So, two different things that has to be taken into consideration separately.
So with that, we conclude our session. I thank Dr. Diab
Thank
very
you.
much for his presentation.